are blessed with life and with time and talent to do any number of things. More, in fact, than we could possibly imagine. And yet not an infinite number of things, for we are mortal, life is finite, so we have limitations of time and space and resources and opportunities, and we'll take advantage of some and not others. That's the way our life is. And we're also limited by our expectations, some of which we just create ourselves and some of which are imposed upon us. So, for instance, if you're my age and a woman, well, you did not expect to be a doctor or a lawyer and certainly not a priest. But you were expected to be a nurse or a teacher or a librarian. And now men hold all those positions as well. And they are nurses and dietitians and all kinds of things that were typical vocations for women. And so expectations have broadened and deepened for everybody. But they do create limitations in their own time. So ultimately we have really an age-old philosophy of life we've inherited from the ancient Romans, carpe diem, seize the day, take advantage of whatever you can. Make something of yourself, we say, which is a very self-centered way of putting it, but lends itself well to a capitalistic society. And indeed, the parable that we have just heard is very capitalistic. But it gives us something interesting to think about. And we look at all of our readings through that lens of theologian Letty Russell, who constantly said, what we see depends on where we stand. So we need to know who we are. Well, we use that lens and hear the prophet Zephaniah speaking to the people of Jerusalem. And he is looking at those people and seeing that they see God through the lens of their experience and their expectation, which is minimal. So those who are complacent say in their hearts, the Lord will not do good, nor will he do harm. In modern parlance, it amounts to whatever. And the prophet says, well, they are wrong, and God's judgment will be against them. God is not just neutral. For, in fact, that neutrality just denies a moral imperative. That means that we're not called to love, not called to love God, not called to love neighbor, and God has created everything out of God's love. So it's such a massive denial of everything that Torah and experience had taught God's people, that it's no wonder that that prophecy is so devastating. For it the people who are so complacent are denying God and denying God's truth. And indeed, what they say in their complacence is rather reminiscent to the enthroned Christ's direction to the angel of the church in Laodicea. For in the book of Revelation, that message is, I know your works. You are neither cold nor hot. I wish that you were either cold or hot. So because you are lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I am about to spit you out of my mouth. Stunning. Just stunning. So Zephaniah and this message to the church is reminding us that the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference. That is deadly. So the message is, well, do something. Get in touch with truth and act on it. And we bring that message to then this parable in the Gospel of Matthew. And recall that by this point, Jesus is with his disciples. very near the time when Jesus will be arrested and tried and go to the cross. And so he's giving a long discourse and quite a few parables that are chosen to prepare his disciples for what is to come. How are they to get along without Jesus? How are they to proceed really into the founding of the church and the spread of the good news? And so he tells this story about a man who went on a long journey, as Jesus himself is about to undertake a journey. And the man gives gifts to his slaves. And there's nothing casual about this. These gifts are chosen on the basis of the ability of each individual slave to do what he can. And when the landowner comes back, after a long time, he's delighted to see that 2 of his slaves had really seen that wealthy man in himself and had really learned from him and had invested those talents, which, by the way, were a huge sum of money. Even 1 talent would have been the wages of a common laborer for nearly 20 years. So even the 1 talent is a fortune. But 5, 2 talents, oh my goodness. And these servants have doubled that investment. Good and faithful servants. Now, on the one hand, if you have one very valuable item like 1 talent, to bury it seems like a prudent thing to do because, you don't want to lose it, right? But the man who buries the 1 talent does not really know his master. He hasn't really absorbed the culture. He isn't looking at it through an appropriate lens. He's just not getting it. And that gets him into trouble. So when he says to his master, well, I knew you to be a harsh man who reaps where you don't sow, so I buried that talent, and here you have what is yours. Well, notice what the owner says to him. He responds sarcastically. He says, you knew, did you, that I'm harsh? You knew that I reap where I don't sow. Oh, very sarcastic. And then it says, you failed. You just did not do what you needed to do. And you lose even what you were given. And so it is a harsh, harsh story. But it is also realistic. That in the sense of doing what you were expected to do and what you were gifted to do and just missing the point altogether. So that's the message to those disciples. It's consistent with the prophet, and it is a message to us. For we have been created by loving God, and we are gifted. And so we could think in terms of the parable, well, God has made an investment in us. And so, the particularly good parable for the stewardship season, what do we do with that investment that has been made? For we might, like the 3rd servant, be fearful. We might fear failure. We don't want to lose that talent. But then again, we might fear success. People do sometimes. After all, success will bring about change, which is risky. Do we really want to change whatever is comfortable, even if it's not so good? Those are real choices that are set before us. And so we don't always act out of fear of failure, but fear of embarrassment, fear of success, fear of change, and don't do anything. Well, this would be a huge mistake, for we are called and gifted to be as creative, as just, as loving as God. And so not to see God through that lens of fear, but see God through that lens of creativity and generosity and love. For no matter how small, our gift is still something to be used. It is our innate creativity and our most godlike capacity. So the image of burying a talent is also an image of death. And Jesus is saying through this story to his disciples, don't do it. Don't make that choice. Embrace what you have, what you've been given, and use it. For to prepare for the end of life, we need to live fully as God has entrusted life to us. And that is the way to be responsible, watchful, sober, fruitful. All of those kinds of things that St. Paul speaks of as well. So to prepare for the next life, well, certainly live this one creatively and lovingly. We have in our own time a leader, a politician, a martyr in some respects, and even a prophet in Nelson Mandela, who said, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small doesn't serve the world.